everyone. Welcome to Listeners Beware, a podcast about all things Goosebumps. My name is Gary.
And I'm Ashley.
And today we are talking about book number 17.
Why I'm Afraid of Bees. This book was first published in March of 1994. And so, we're here in the mid-90s now. We're getting there and going on to book 17. This one is a little bit shorter than the others. So it's clocking it at about 115 pages. So it's a much quicker read than the previous books.
Yeah, I breezed through it. I was like, it's over?
One might say we flew right through the book.
Oh, man.
Ayo. All right. So, Gary, would you like to give us the beautiful synopsis of this Goosebumps book?
I would love to. Right brain, wrong body. Gary Lutz needs a vacation from himself. Bullies are constantly beating him up. His only friend is his computer. Even his little sister doesn't like him. But now Gary's dream is about to come true. He's going to exchange bodies with another kid for a whole week. Gary can't wait to get a new body until something horrible happens and Gary finds out his new body isn't exactly human.
Oh, dear. Now, would you want to be somebody else? So, this Gary Lutz, not like in his life. Lutz the Klutz, right?
Yeah, that's what people call him, and he calls himself. Mr. Lutz has some self-esteem issues.
Yeah. And he does. And I will say that out of all the books we've read so far, this one is the saddest for me in terms of just like what he is consistently going through. Like, we're in the middle of summer break, which any kid that's 12 would just like be down for summer. This is the best thing ever. But for Gary, it's not good. It's not good at all. Like, every corner he turns, it is just a really bad experience for him. I feel really badly for him.
I know. It's like Gary's been looking for representation for years, and Gary Lutz is not what we've been asking for. No, I know this one is super sad in that regard. It reminded me a lot of Be Careful What You Wish For, because I felt like her story was kind of tragic in its own way too, but Gary's is sadder somehow.
Yeah, because he has no area of reprieve. Like his next door neighbor, who is obsessed with bees, is a beekeeper, also, tends to prank him and pick on him and make fun of him. And I love the way his laugh is described. It's like this gaw haw haw haw. And in my head, that's exactly what it sounded like when I read it.
Right.
But also, like, even the animals pick on him. Like the cat, who's supposed to be like the sweet kitten, is like clawing him and attacking him out of nowhere. And it's just like, oh, poor Gary.
Poor Gary. And I mean, he's trying to make friends. He's trying to get out and be active. He's trying to talk to girls, trying to play baseball, trying to ride his bike. He's just not good at any of it.
Now, bike aside, I will say that the rest of it was pretty sad, especially the baseball scene. It's like a very small scene, but like he goes out to the field to see if there's any kids because he's lonely. Like it straight up acknowledges he's lonely and he just wants to feel a part of like the ecosystem of neighborhood school children. So he goes out there, and even just the beginning when they're describing like how he's like, well, if I just kind of hang out around the edges, they might include me. That is so sad.
This Gary relates. Like, I was not a sports kid, but whenever I had to play, I was always picked last. So, like I found that relatable and even like sadder on a personal level because it hit a little too close to home.
But not home base.
But not home base.
Because he couldn't make it to, I mean, that was a bad joke.
Neither could I. They were right.
They walked both Garys. Or wait, they didn't even walk him. He struck out. Both Garys struck out. I will say, out of all of the scenes, I do feel pretty badly for him, except for the bike scene. And that for me is just, he's got this brand new bike, this amazing bike his dad got him. And then he decided to show off, which as we do, right? Like, we do show off when we're, there's someone we like or there's someone who catches our eyes. And for him, he's got, these two girls that are the popular girls that he thinks are so pretty. And he decides to take his hands off his bike and just nonchalantly ride and show off a bit. And for me, it's like, all right, come on, Gary, no hands on your bike. And of course, the girls are at first freaked out. You're going to get hit by a car. And then, he swerves and hits a tree instead, or a pole. I don't remember. One of those things.
Oh, Gary.
Oh, Gary.
I just kept sighing and lamenting that throughout the book. It's been a common theme throughout my life. No.
That was the only part, honestly, that I felt not sad, but like, yeah, typical childhood, typical adolescence. We show off. We end up just like totally making a fool out of ourselves. And that is kind of humorous. And we can all relate to that, right? If nothing else, we can all relate to trying to impress somebody and being a total fool.
Right. I know. The kid next to me just got a bicycle, and I'm like watching him in the roundabout near my house, and I'm like, am I going to have to go out there and get him off, like scrape him off the ground because he's trying to do wheelies and stuff already? I'm like, kid, take it easy.
Take it easy, child. I mean, that's what they do. You learn your boundaries. You try to act cool, and sometimes it doesn't always work out. Now, as endearing as that scene was that we could all relate to immediately after he runs into the neighborhood bullies and gets pounded, I think this is the second most violent bullying scene so far that RL has presented to us. They break his nose. He's got scratches all over him. And it's just like, holy cow, RL, is there something we need to talk about? Because some of the picking on that has been described in the books is pretty consistent and common. But some of the bullying scenes that RL describes, they're pretty violent. They're pretty vicious. And it makes me wonder, like, where that's coming from. Was that just really common back in our day and I don't remember that?
I think, like, not bullying to this degree, no. I mean, obviously bullying was a thing everywhere. As someone who was formerly, somewhat bullied, like, it existed. Likewise. But no one tried to break my nose, like, that's a little much.
Yeah, I mean, he's talking about the scratches on his arms and his face and blood everywhere. He has to go home and like take his clothes off because they're bloody. And it's like, whoa, that's like, he's escalating the violence in these stories. And I'm curious as an adult, what's driving this element that seems to be threading through a lot of the Goosebumps stories.
I don't know. I wonder if this is what he could get away with being violent about, like if Scholastic or whoever was like, you can't be too violent with the monsters or the horror element. So he's putting violence in where he can. But it still doesn't feel right.
It feels excessive. Yeah. Is what it like. I think back to the 80s, 90s, because yes, I'm that old. And to your point, yeah, bullying was common and we were introduced in programming, whether it be TV, movie, otherwise, to kind of like the pushing and the gentle, if you can call it that, bullying. But this is just straight assault and violence. And I don't recall that being huge during our time.
I don't know. It felt really out of place.
I mean, physical bullying, yeah, that's always been around. Middle class suburbia, I don't feel like that kind of violence and gangy gumpon was a thing. And so I am really curious why that is a common thread and element that he seems to be weaving in throughout these books.
Yeah, I mean, aside from just getting the chance to ask him at some point, I don't know how we're ever going to know, but that is a great question. Like,
someone email him.
Get him on the line. Caller 5. Oh, hi, RL.
Caller number 5.
Yeah. What was the most violent? Was it Ghost Next Door? Is that the one you're thinking of?
No. Monster Blood, when he's riding his bike and the bullies tackle him and pummel him in front of his friend. Was it Andy? I don't remember. I think that was her name. Yeah. On her lawn, and
Right.
he's like describing how much pain he's feeling afterwards. I feel like as much as we're given the visual in this, where he's got the blood and the scratches, it's a visual description, but in the previous one, it was a very physical pain description that I think causes it to, no pun intended, but hit a little harder. So.
Right. Cut it out, RL. Dial it back.
Or explain yourself.
Yes, please. We have questions.
So yeah, we feel badly for Gary. I mean, it's one thing after another. He is just taking hit after hit, literally, from life, and he's miserable. And I get it. It's got to be layered on so thickly so that it would make sense why this 12-year-old would then go and come to a complete stranger's business and say, I want to trade bodies with somebody else.
I don't know that it needs to be that thick, though. Like at 12, I would have probably considered it just to try it, just to see what it was like to live in someone else's shoes. I would have been hesitant, but I would have considered it.
Yeah, I think it speaks to desperation and what people are willing to do when they're desperate, so much as even like trade their life.
Yeah.
Kind of like selling your soul. Now, what I find interesting is that stranger danger, these kids are going to these adults at this business they know nothing about and just trusting these people. Even so much as with their home address. He doesn't go to the building to trade bodies when he finally does decide to do it. They come to his house and they wait until his parents are gone. It's like no parental consent. When your parents are gone, cool, we're coming over. We're going to attach you to this contraption and all's going to go well. No worries.
Won't be weird at all.
So many issues here as a parent. I was just like, are you kidding? Come on, Gary.
Even this time she's not talking about me. Even as a non-parent, I'm like, there's a lot of red flags happening right now.
So many red flags.
Yeah.
I mean, to the point where this lady is like, let me take pictures of you just in case you do decide to go through with it. Give me your address. Give me your phone number. And it's just like, did your parents not warn you? No wonder bad things are happening. No, I'm kidding.
Right.
And we learn about Dirk, who, you know, she calls him and says, we have a taker, someone who wants to take your body and who's willing to trade with you. Dirk Davis wants someone who's smart and he's going to come pass all his summer tests for him. And for me, I'm just like, Dirk? Did you ever know a kid named Dirk?
No. And Dirk Davis? That's douchey.
Yeah, he's Dirk the Jerk. He belongs in the Maryland. Off he goes.
Yes.
Dirk the Dick.
I
mean, it's just one letter off.
It's true.
I feel like RL wanted to call him Dick, but he just didn't. And so he's like, well, we'll go with, what can I put in there? Nope, Dirk. Dirk works.
Dirk works.
Dirk the Dick. Dirk the Jerk. So many avenues there. But Dirk's this like super cool guy who's kind of like a jock. And Gary, of course, is like, why would he want to switch places with me? Oh, yeah, to pass his test. Duh.
Right. Because all sports guys are dumb, according to this book.
RL leans into a lot of the tropes from the 90s.
Does.
So
he does.
Why not? Those archetypes he's not letting them down at all. And I love how quickly it happens. Like she goes in, straps him on, presses a button, and like, boom, switch happens.
Yeah.
And poor Gary wakes up to find he's not in Dirk's body.
He a bee.
He is a buzz bee.
Yes.
And the thing I like throughout this entire book after he becomes a bee is that everything he does makes sense. You know, he doesn't automatically know how to be a bee. He has to figure out how to use his little bee tongue. He doesn't know what he's supposed to eat. And it really is like, what am I supposed to be doing? You know, some body switching things we're exposed to, like the animorphs and things like that, like the inherent nature of the animal kicks in. But
Yeah.
in this case, there isn't an inherent nature because it's his mind. His mind is still human.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, like he's not great at being a human, so maybe he'll have better luck as a bee. That's kind of what you're hoping for at this point.
But even as a bee, he's being ganged up on.
I know. Poor bee
Those
Gary.
worker bees keep trying to corner him and they're mad at him. And they're like, get it together, man. You need to be acting like a bee. Be a bee.
Be the bee.
Be a better bee. Yeah. I don't know. I felt bad for him. And I felt badly for him when I found it funny that that's the only time Mr. Andretti is actually nice to him.
Right.
Like he's sweet talking him and he's like, come on, my furry little friend. You got to get back to your house.
Yes, that's true.
And look, let's be honest, as adults, if some kid is constantly always spying on you and watching you in your backyard while you're just trying to go about your own business, you'd probably be a little annoyed too. Like, dude, do your thing.
Yeah.
Go be a kid. Go ride your bike.
Right. Stop being nosy.
Stop being nosy. Buzz off.
You got all the bee puns today.
I really do. I like Mr. Andretti. I can relate to Mr. Andretti. Mr. Andretti be cool to me. Does he tease Gary? Yes. Do I think he goes overboard? No. I think it's a fun kind of, you're bugging me, so I'm going to bug you.
Bug.
Kind of vibe. But he's not mean. He's not doing anything that's cruel to Gary. And so I just feel like Gary takes it a little bit more sensitively because, rightfully so, everything else is done from a cruel nature, and people really aren't that kind to him. I don't mind Mr. Andretti so much, and I get it. Gary is kind of always keeping his nose in Mr. Andretti's business. Yeah. It's fine. I feel like it's a kind of reciprocated annoyance with each other, like a playful camaraderie almost.
It's just one doesn't see it as playful and the other does. I mean, Mr. Andretti reminds me of neighbors and even uncles to a degree, who were mildly dickish, but not like full dicks, like they're like the compact mirror.
He's a compact mirror. I love that. They're compact mirror. They're compact mirror land. Yeah. He almost reminds me of, I envisioned the neighbor from Dennis the Menace.
Yes.
That I kind of saw, I had in my head. And so it wasn't that bad. And he does have a soft side. Like you get to experience firsthand how he treats his bees when Gary is a bee. And he's actually really nice to his bees. And he sweet talks them. And it's like, all right, Gary, like, come on. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Mr. Andretti needs a date.
Yeah, probably. He could hang out with Ms. Carmen, who is part of the person-to-person vacations.
What a great name.
So Ms. Carmen is so matter-of-fact and like, don't even worry about it, that I feel like a lot of the switcheroo accident is really her fault. Because she's like, don't worry about the bees. It's fine. It's fine. While they're literally like hovering around and inside the equipment. And it's just like, Ms. Carmen, you're doing something very dangerous. You probably should have monitored your environment a little better. Like, just saying, maybe this is why this should occur in the office and not elsewhere.
Although we learned in The Fly that even if you're in the laboratory, it doesn't necessarily work out to your advantage every time.
Fair. I found a little bit of a plot hole here. So it was required the machine be hooked up to Gary, but not Dirk. And Dirk was able to stop the body from being taken back because we find out later he doesn't want to give it back. He likes Gary's life and he likes Gary's family and he refuses to give it back. And for me, it's just like, wait a minute. If Gary was what was required for the transfer, why do we need Dirk's permission to give it back?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because the bee had to be on site. That's why Gary got put into the bee's body because the bee ended up inside of the machine. So then Gary and the bee switched, but it still doesn't explain how Dirk was connected.
Yeah. I mean, my assumption is that like maybe someone is at Dirk's house at the same time with the machine. I don't know. It's all very confusing.
Because Miss Carmen seems to run it all. She takes the machines, she goes to their houses, and she handles the photo albums. I really think this is Miss Carmen's business. She acts as though she's like the associate or the assistant running everything. But really, that's all we ever are introduced to is Ms. Carmen behind the front desk, Ms. Carmen managing the equipment, Ms. Carmen going to the homes to fix things. And I don't know. I was just kind of curious about that. Like, I feel like there was a disconnect there.
Yeah, literally.
So there was that. And to your point, maybe there's a second person we don't know about and they just didn't flesh it out in the story that's at the other person's corresponding home. But then how would that impact the bee if it's inside of the device? Maybe it's just like Wonka's television.
Right.
Where like it crosses between the two devices and it being inside of there is how all three of them got jumbled. I have no idea.
That's a good thought. I mean, I don't know. The best I could come up with is that Miss Carmen is one of the plant people from the second book. And so like there's a twin version of her running around at Dirk's house.
At Dirk's house. And Dirk's like, I'm not doing it. I don't know. I was just curious about that.
I don't know. I just want to tie things into other books at this point, but
do it.
Yeah,
she's a plant person.
She's a. It's weird where this book tries like. It gets really fast and loose with science a lot, but then it also gets oddly specific with science at other times. Like bee science is very prevalent in this book, whereas logic science not so much.
I mean, the bee science was fun. I learned some bee facts that I didn't remember. So it was like, oh, yeah, all right, that's kind of cool. I learned something new. I almost felt like it was a subtle advertisement for whatever book he was referencing. What was it, The World of Bees or something? But it was just like he kept referencing what he learned in there. And I'm like, is this an ad placement book? Like, I don't understand. A book within a book.
Mm-hmm. It just made me want to find some old zoo books and flip through them.
Yeah, learn more about bees. Yeah. I'm not a fan of bees, but I was like, cool, okay, I really don't like bees. Did you know, for example, bees like fried chicken?
Really?
It's not something I learned in a book. I had quite a few outdoor activities when I lived in Northern California, and the bees swarmed the fried chicken. And we had all sorts of things out, fruit, like you name it, it was out on the picnic table, but literally dozens of bees swarming to the fried chicken box and trying to get in the fried chicken box.
Crazy.
That was weird. And that happened on multiple occasions. Who knew?
They're like fruits. Ugh, fried chicken, please.
Yeah. We like it. I actually Googled it after that happened, and apparently it's a thing. I don't remember the science behind it, but apparently it's a thing.
Wow. Well, that's pretty wild. I haven't been a fan of bees I don't really want to meet someone who is a fan of bees, I don't think, but like, because that's just to me as a choice. But after watching My Girl at a particularly young age, like bees have just, spoilers.
Oh, that movie made me cry. And when we were reading this book, I had a feeling that movie was going to come up during this episode.
Leave it to me. But yeah, like that terrified me as a kid. And I've just kind of been distant from them ever since. I was stung a few times when I was young, but it's been a long time.
I will say My Girl definitely helped me develop a healthy fear of bees.
Yeah.
And the fact that allergies to bee stings tends to run a little bit in my family. I was tested and I'm not allergic to bees, but still like that was like healthy fear. So
yeah.
Unhealthy fear maybe. I don't like bees.
No. Us and Nick Cage.
and bees follow me everywhere. They sense my fear and they follow me. And I'm like, this is awful. Leave me alone, bees. Buzz off. Now, what's funny is, he brought up the bee dance because he talked about basically this breakdancing bee in the hive. And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
why is this bee acting so oddly? Oh, yeah, bees dance when they find food. And, that's how they signal the hive that there's
Mm-hmm.
food nearby. And it's funny because have you ever seen a twerking bee? It's a thing.
What? Oh my.
It reminded me of a twerky bee. And I'm sorry, like, it's not like bees actually twerk, but
Yeah.
when they dance and they're, like, gyrating their butt, it actually looks like or their stinger, whatever you wanna call it looks like they're actually twerking.
What
I've
if?
had one do that on my car window, and I was laughing so hard.
Wow. They got that bumble butt.
I know, I'm like, "Look at that little bee go. Get it, bee.
Get it, bee.
Get it, bee. Dang. It's putting in
Yeah.
work."
Man, what if people reacted the same way? Like, what if we danced to let people know food was near? The food court would just be a rave.
I mean, I dance when I eat something really good. So does that count?
I know you do.
I know. I do like a little happy dance. I'm like, "Ooh, this is good." I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm a bee partially. I'm partial bee.
Partial bee.
I'm partial bee because I get a little happy dance when something tastes good. I don't know. But twerking bees make me laugh every time. I'm like a darn child. I giggle so hard. I'm like, look at that little bee go. Part of me, I just want to put on like Sir Mix-a-Lot, Baby Got Back. Give the bee a little bit of a soundtrack.
My bumblebee don't want none unless you got buns, hon.
Exactly. Unless you got buds,
Buds? Oh,
flower buds.
yeah. Unless
We're
you got
working on
buds,
it.
bud.
I'm just saying, the bees twerking, bees dancing. Oh man, we're
I'm here
going
for
off
it.
the rails here.
It's about time. We've
I'm
been on the
going
rails
off
for
the
too long this episode.
Yeah, we don't need no rails. I just
I've heard-
love how he took quite a big paragraph to describe the bee breakdancing. I'm like, that was really important to the writer of this book to put that in there. It was amusing, though. It landed.
It did. It did.
So he gets out because Mr. Andretti had, forced all the bees to go back into their hive because he's a responsible beekeeper. And eventually he gets back out and finds his way over to Ms. Carmen at People to People Vacations, but not before seeing that Dirk is having a good old time in his body. He's teaching kids how to skateboard. He's just like absolutely living it up in Gary's body.
Yeah.
Which for me is a moment of pause because I feel like Gary, up until this point, blamed everybody else for his misfortunes.
Mm.
Like, it's not within my power to stand up to bullies. It's not within my power to be confident and skateboard and ride my bike. And do you know what I mean? It's just like
yeah.
in his head, he had led himself to believe he wasn't capable and that he wasn't confident enough within his Gary body to be someone that could have friends, that could stand up to bullies. And so seeing Dirk do this within his body, I think really helped Gary.
Yeah.
Because I think up until this point, he might have almost blamed it on that's just my luck and that's just the way I look and there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
But really seeing Dirk thrive, it was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Maybe there is something I can do about it.
Yeah. That's interesting. I kind of missed that connection, but I like that.
Yeah, I think it was important for him to see that.
Mm-hmm.
And, then he goes to find Ms. Carmen and gets her attention very smartly through the microphone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which makes me wonder, if we were to put bees and insects up to microphones, would they speak in English too?
I know. You just hear, help me.
Please don't eat me. Yeah. And I love how Miss Carmen's like, we can't do anything until Monday. Have a good weekend.
Right. Miss Carmen's got some plans.
She sure does. She's like, I got a date with Mr. Andretti. Ooh, look at that.
Ooh, this great beekeeper I've been hearing about.
I've heard he's sweet as honey.
Oh, girl.
Mm. And I do love that we see Gary being more empowered as a bee because at some point, he sees Dirk standing up to the bullies. And
Mhm.
even as a bee, even as a very small scaled down version of himself, he feels so empowered that he goes and like scares them too. He's
Yeah.
like buzzing in their ears, buzzing them in their nose. He buzzes inside one of their mouths. I'm like, that's
Oh,
brave, Gary. You're going to get swallowed.
oof. Yeah.
Gary's becoming empowered, which we need that. We
We
need
do.
him to do that because Dirk is holding his body hostage. And I think he even goes to Dirk's house to see what's going on with Dirk's body. And we find out that the mind of the bee is inside of Dirk's body. And I love that the bee is happy as could be. Ha! That's a lot of bees.
It's a
Like,
whole
he
lot of bees.
smiles at Gary, sticks his face in a flower, and is trying to eat, like, the pollen, and it's just like, "This is the happiest bee ever." He's like, "I don't care. I'm a human, but I still love my flowers."
The instinct just takes over. I mean, more
And
or
he's
less.
happy. Yeah. He's got his instincts, and he's still chilling out, like,
Mhm.
happiest little innocent bee ever inside of Dirk's body.
Yeah. He gets the best of both worlds, not unlike Hannah Montana.
Oh, goodness. We're not gonna climb that mountain.
Ah.
But he eventually goes back to his own house to confront Dirk, who is inside of his body. And it's interesting because we learn that Dirk's been able to hear him all along because
Mhm.
through this magical three-way confusion of bodies and mind, Dirk's inherited the power to be able to hear insects and bees and all those things. And so he's like, dude, I can hear you. I've been hearing you since day one and you're annoying. Shut up.
Right, right. I've been listening to cicadas talk about their dinner for the past week.
Exactly.
That's got to be a nightmare. That would make me want to leave that body immediately if I could hear all the bugs talking around me.
That's a lot of bugs. I mean, could you imagine that?
Oh my
Hearing
gosh.
all of the little ants talking as you walk by, like, oh my gosh. So he's just refusing to give up that body. He's going so far as to even like, I'm going to smash you with this comic book. And it's like, whoa, that's murder. That's a human being in that little bee body.
Mm-hmm. A human
But
being?
that's good. He's a human being. So Gary retaliates and he goes and riles up all the bees, which I love that.
Bees. Yeah.
He's like smashing into walls. He's of the hive. He's like getting that honeycomb fully riled up. And then getting them all to come attack. And I love that entire scene.
It is great.
Yeah. All the bees come and attack. And I think it's great because in a moment of pure, this is victorious, I feel great. And even if it's not working, aha, take that. And he stings Dirk right in the nose. And for me, I'm just like, I find it hilarious because I think is it Dirk falls off the bed when he stings him? I mean, I probably would too. Could you imagine a bee sting right on the side of your nose?
Don't wanna.
That would be so painful. And he falls off the bed.
Yeah.
And he's just like, victory. Oh, wait.
He suddenly remembers that he gave us a whole science lesson earlier in the book about how bees die when they sting someone.
He
Like,
sure
Gary-
did give us that science lesson.
Gary, you klutz.
Gary, you were so close. But I mean, at this point, what can he do? Ms. Carmen even said if Dirk refuses to give up the body, there's nothing he can do. And he knows bees, according to his other science lesson, only have like a small lifespan. So granted, he didn't do it intentionally. Like, well, we're going out with a bang. It was pure, I'm angry and take this. He stood up to his bully. And there was that potential consequence, which realistically, if you are standing up to bullies, There is always a consequence, right?
That's right.
Potentially.
Potentially, yes.
And so he goes flying out the window, floating down to the ground. But he kind of accepts what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Yeah.
like, well, this is what it is.
Guess I'm dead now.
Well, but I at least, got one good sting in.
That's right.
It just this little bee floating down to the ground, ever so melodramatically. The tragic story of Gary.
Oh, that's the name of my autobiography.
He's such a copycat. Copy bee?
Lutz, you thief.
Lutz, you thief. How dare you? But you know what? Lo and behold, what do we find out? He wakes up. He's like, I gotta fly. I gotta fly. Wait, why am I not flying?
Why do I feel heavy again?
I don't understand. And of course, we realize he's back in his body.
Way to go, Gary.
Woo!
It's his first victory in 113 pages.
So why do you think that is? I really would love to get into why do we think that fixed everybody going back to their bodies?
I think maybe whenever one of them died, it broke the chain. That's my theory. The boys went back to their bodies, but the bee remains dead.
Aww.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, because he has no stinger.
Yeah. He wakes up, he's like, I'm going to live forever. My stinger's gone.
Poor happy bee.
Poor happy Gary B.
Happy Gary B. It's a good theory. It took one of them dying.
I don't know why they automatically went back to their original bodies, though. That part makes no sense to me.
I don't know.
Yeah. Did you have a theory, or was it just sort of made no sense?
No, I mean, I'm with you. Death breaks the chain somehow, but how it determines, who still lives, who dies, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess being a children's book, it had to be the bee.
Although it never says the bee dies.
Well, that's true. Maybe the bee went back to his normal life too. And if that's the case, then it's just sloppy writing.
Yeah, probably they just left it vague for a very specific reason.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're even given a follow-up on Dirk. He runs into Gary. He apologizes for trying to hijack his body and, makes a little laugh about, and I failed my test because it was a bee taking the test. Ha, ha, ha. We get the Dirk follow-up. We don't get the bee follow-up. Did it go back? Did it die? Is it a bee living without a stinger? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, maybe, yeah. I like the idea that a bee without a stinger is immortal.
In some way.
In some way. I don't know.
Probably not what actually happened, but
Well, they didn't really give us much to go on. And you bring up a great point whenever you mention how short this book is. They could have done so much more. And I realize we keep saying they, so should we talk about the elephant in the potential book?
Do it.
I read somewhere that around this time, R.L. may have started using ghostwriters for some of his books. And that reads based on what I read, based on what I read, he still had creative control and it was his ideas on the paper, but then maybe some of the chapters were written by other people to help him meet this deadline. I don't know if there's any truth behind that, but this story does not feel like the quality that he's been bringing us.
Possibly. But I would like to counter. We weren't given the best quality the past few books. So Horrorland was disjointed. There was that whole section where we're like, where the heck did we veer left and why?
Right.
Fever Swamp, that ended abruptly. And that also felt like, whoa, what happened? It felt very incomplete and quickly finished, like a rush ending. So part of me wonders if the quality started suffering in his books because he was trying to churn out too many. So they did introduce the ghostwriters. Because in this one, albeit it didn't have as many horror elements, it felt very cohesive. It felt like one story all the way through.
That's true. You counter well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, this book does read really well, and it's a breeze. Like it's super quick. Where they choose to focus sometimes is a little strange, in terms of like, we're just going to throw some science facts at you, but then ignore the biggest science in the whole story, which is the body swapping. Like it's a little, disjointed.
I don't know if I feel the disjoint in this one though, because body swapping doesn't exist. I think it's hard to really explain it. We saw it the same with Stay Out of the Basement.
Right.
How the plants are becoming human clones somehow. They give us a little bit of it, but not much of it. And it's just like, well, they turned into a human plant thing because my blood accidentally got like, they really rushed that science because I don't think they themselves understand how would science work in this. And so with this one, I feel it was very similar. Like, how do you take a mental conscious and put it into something else's physical body? So it's like, well, let's just do just enough because realistically, it is for 11, 12-year-olds.
Right.
So most of them aren't really going to be looking for the hard science answer to that. So if we just say, yeah, they strapped on some things to his heads and his wrists and like, yeah, they press a button and there it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, it's like, let's give them just enough because it's for a child, but we don't have to really focus on the science too much because it's for children.
Right.
I don't know.
I don't either.
But I feel like when you go sci-fi in a horror element or in a tense element that's fictional and you create something new that doesn't exist out there, like there isn't hard science behind, I think you have a benefit of being able to make all of your rules because it doesn't exist. So this is your world, you create it, you establish the boundaries and the rules. The thing that I think we've noticed a lot with the Goosebumps books is that they have this awesome opportunity to create these worlds and completely flesh them out and put their boundaries and rules and define their universe, but they're not fully taking advantage of that.
Right.
They're kind of halfway going there. They're saying, okay, here's the world. You don't really need to understand it. But the problem is they give us too much. If you plan to tell us you don't really need to understand it, don't give us some of the rules. Because then the rules don't always make sense with how it ends. For example, only for what we understand, only connecting to Gary, not Dirk, or at least not telling us that's happening. So then when Dirk's holding hostage of the body, we're like, how is this possible? Can't you just force it like you did at the beginning?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And that's the beauty, but also the problem when you create something that doesn't exist, that you really need to clearly define it so that then when things later unfold within that world, it doesn't feel like plot holes or it doesn't feel like it's negating what you built up earlier.
Yes, 100%.
Kind of like Stay Out of the Basement.
Right.
Because Monster Blood, that was magic. She was a witch. So really, it's just like when you throw magic in, it really can be a little bit more forgiving. But when you go sci-fi like this, that's a little less forgiving.
Yeah, for sure.
Now I'm getting nerdy.
I mean, it's funny that when I think back about Stay Out of the Basement, it does have like a similar loose science feel to it, but I just wasn't as, I don't want to use the word jaded, but I wasn't as versed, I guess, on the reread of Goosebumps as I am now. And I wonder how that one would feel if I went back to it. Like, would I be seeing things that, I missed the first time because it was all fresh and exciting, or, how would that read?
And this is where I think your assessment is spot on with what they're focusing on giving us facts about kind of maybe shoots itself in the foot because instead of the basement, we're not given a lot of science facts. So it doesn't feel as intellectually driven. I don't know if that's the best way to say it, but like, see out of the basement, it's just like, ooh, there's plant monsters, blood, DNA. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Whereas with this one, and Dad's being secretive and about the science, so it makes sense that we wouldn't know everything. But with this one, we are being given facts. So the hard facts on the bees, and then the kind of soft elements of the science behind the body swapping, I feel like they kind of war with each other,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
It does. It does. And you're right. I mean, earlier when you said you're not sure if disjointed is the word, you're right. And it's the word I used because I couldn't find another word, but this book is pretty cohesive. It's just its focus is in the wrong spot throughout. So I don't know.
How would you fix it?
I wouldn't write it. No.
So I take it you didn't like this book.
No, let's not get into that. But yet. But I really don't know how I would fix it. I mean, I would maybe give some clarity somehow as to what brought the swap back to the boys. And I would probably focus less on like, here's some fun facts about bees. Like that's not, I don't know. Like I found this story exciting. I found it thrilling even at times, but I don't think I ever found it like spooky or really even scary, aside from the fact that it's about bees. So I would have somehow worked more of a horror element into it. I just don't know exactly how. What about you?
Yeah, I think the horror element was too realistic.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, being swapped into a bee body is not realistic, but the idea that he almost kept being killed by everybody, his sister, Dirk, the cat was going to eat him. He had the car was going to run over him. Like, he had a lot of near death experiences. And that in and of itself is absolutely terrifying, but it's not horror.
Right.
It's more of like a Lifetime movie versus a horror movie. And so for me, I think to your point, yes, adding something a little bit more on the spooky side in some way. Because even Stay Out of the Basement, this whole kind of clone, you not knowing, is that your dad? Is that not your dad? And he's going to feed you this gunk and turn you into a plant monster too. Like, that is horror. So figuring out a way for this to incorporate something just a little bit more, give it a little bit more edge of that horror, because it felt more like a TV daytime special against bullying versus a scary Goosebumps book.
Yes, this is a very special episode of Goosebumps.
Yes, it's episode on bullying, which again, that's also scary. That was also endearing and heartbreaking, but it wasn't the Goosebumps we know. And that's where I get where you're saying it does feel like it was written by somebody else, because it absolutely was a cohesive story. I think it was a good story. I think that it was a solid story. However, I don't feel it was a Goosebumps story.
Yeah. 100%.
And that's where I get when you say disjointed. That is the one thing that feels disjointed to me. It doesn't feel like it's cohesive with the previous 16 books that we've had. There is an element missing that maybe they thought just the idea of the sci-fi of switching a body and almost being killed through natural, means of because you're in a bee body. Maybe they thought that was enough, but for me, it wasn't. I don't think it was enough.
No, I don't think so either.
Maybe how they could have made it more Goosebumps. And I thought about this when I was reading it. This is where I thought it was going, to be honest. is at the beginning when he went to person-to-person vacations office, had this been intentional, had there been a malevolent thing where like, I'm going to teach you to appreciate your life because I'm intentionally putting you in a bee body. I'm intentionally putting a bee in your body. And haha. You know what I mean? Like if we added that level of malevolence, because maybe that's what's missing in this. There is no one person that was out to do something truly evil.
Right.
It was just, whoops, a machine glitch. Oh no, I don't know how we're going to fix this. Even Dirk not wanting to give it up because he didn't like his own life. That was sad. He wanted parents that cared. He wanted a sister that he could get along with. Like, that was also sad. He didn't like his own life either. And every kid that walks into that office is experiencing some kind of sadness or discontent that is making them desperate enough to want to switch with somebody else. So there was no actual malevolence or anything evil per se in this book. It was just all, oh man, what a mix up. Oops.
Right. Yeah, that's such a good point. I wish that Miss Carmen had have been revealed as some mastermind or something. I mean, like the idea of there are adults and children and possibly cats and dogs walking around in each other's body. Like that's way more interesting than anything we got in the Bee story.
Yeah, and I think that would have added the Goosebumps element if it had just been these unappreciative little brats.
Yeah.
I'm going to show them I'm putting a bee in his body. Like, take Dirk out of the equation. I'm putting a bee in his body, and I'm going to put him in a bee body. And imagine if the bee is still coherent enough to be like, look at me rocking it in this human body. I could skateboard. I could do this. And versus like, oh, that individual doesn't want to give it back. Just them saying, you had your chance in your body. You don't get it back.
Yeah.
That would be horror.
Yeah.
And I think then that would be Goosebumps.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Look, we fixed the book.
We fixed it.
Woo, hurrah.
This is my new favorite segment.
How to
I hope
fix
they're
the
not
book.
all this broken, but like I enjoy figuring out how to make it a little better.
How to weave it together so it's more cohesive.
Yes.
Creepy
Yes,
cohesive.
yes. Creepy cohesive.
And what I do love, though, is that even though this doesn't feel Goosebumps-y, Gary does have a new appreciation for his life. He is empowered. He believes in himself. And lo and behold, what does that look like? Well, he's actually got friends. He is trusting himself and learning the confidence to be better at baseball and skateboarding. And not because it's like, ooh, I got new powers. It's just he believes in himself now.
Yeah. Yes. I love that.
I do like the twist of him trying to eat pollen from a flower, though, at the end.
That-
It's
that
like,
was-
wait. What happened there?
Right.
What do you think it means by that? Was that just a little twist they tried to put in, or do you think it symbolized anything?
I think it was a twist, but like I like the idea that the bee's body died, so he has to go somewhere. So
Oh,
Gary
so
now
you
shares
think that
his
was a
brain?
part of the bee in there?
Could be. Gary shares his brain.
Gary shares his brain. Oh, boy. For me, I actually think it symbolized the experience that it will always be a part of him. That he learned from it some really big life-changing things, and it will always be a part of him. Things that we go through that are traumatic or life-learning, things we grow from, don't stick with us in just the obvious straightforward ways like him learning to skateboard better and be friends and all that stuff. But also it changes our lives in subtle ways, although I guess sucking pollen from a flower isn't subtle, but like it becomes a part of us
Yeah.
in more than one way. So
Yeah. I really like that take. So
I'm a nerd. I likes the books. So there was no corresponding TV episode. I'm okay with that. I think they did that intentionally because this is not really a Goosebumpsy thing.
Yeah.
And how do you make this into something that's going to keep people captivated and feel spooky?
I feel like just based on how the last episode went, I feel like the first part would be the book, and then the second part would just be Dirk walking around with the bee brain, just like doing everything wrong. Like that's a whole 22 minutes of that.
They don't do the TV episodes very well. I'm glad they didn't make this into a book, honestly.
Me too.
So, I'm glad they didn't make this into a TV episode. This is a book.
Yes.
All right. So do we have any final thoughts for this book? Why I Am Afraid of Bees.
I just like, as we've been having this conversation, I feel like I didn't like the book a whole lot initially, but it's a fine book. It's just the parts that I got hung up on really took me out. And then like you kind of brought to light, it's not really an R.L. Stine story. Like it exists in his world, but it doesn't feel like his story. If this were just a like general YA book, I'd be totally fine with it. But in terms of Goosebumps and the world that has been built in the Stineverse, like this is a bit of a letdown for me. What about you?
Yeah, I'm with you. I completely agree that as a standalone on its own, I think it's perfectly fine. I think it's empowering for kids that maybe are going through being bullied, and I totally get it on that aspect. But like you said, I just don't think it's a Stineverse book. Now, speaking of Stineverse books, what book are we reading next, Gary?
We are getting a sequel. Is this our first sequel?
I think it's our first sequel.
Monster Blood 2, going all the way back to book 3 with book 18.
Woo! Monster Blood 2. This is going to be another shorty, 121 pages, so we'll see how this goes. And I don't believe there's a corresponding TV episode for this one, right?
There is not, because we got Monster Blood on a plane in the TV episode sequel.
That's right. Well, I'm looking forward to more Monster Blood. I hope we get to experience more with Evan and his dog Trigger, but we'll see.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Very exciting. All right. Well, thank you to everyone for tuning in to Listeners Beware. Are you looking for more spooky podcast content? Check out 3 Haunted Podcasts, where Ashley and friends talk about all the things that go bump in the night.
And if you're looking for something nostalgic like this, check me out at the Wax Nostalgic Network, waxnostalgicnetwork.com. And also follow us on Instagram and Facebook, Listeners Beware Podcast. No underscores, just that.
Just that. Until next time.
I was just going to put chapstick on. I'm like, oh, it's Burt's Bees.
It's Burt's Bees.
It's Gary's Bees. Sort of. Like, I mean, Gary is an extreme klutz, but I'm sure that people like that exist. But Mr. Andretti is... You?
Yeah, I'm total klutz. Like, I was that kid that was constantly falling over my own feet. Do you know how many times I sprained my ankles over nothing?
Really?
Like, I'd just be walking and my ankle would roll out, and I was like, how is this a thing? Like, it's...
My heels don't work.
I don't get it. I don't walk very good, but
No. But you talk good.
Oh, thanks. I use them words and things.
Yeah, well, I mean, I stumble over my feet all the time too, but I have an excuse.
You're tall?
Well, size 13 feet. They get in the way.
What are you, a hobbit?
What?
They have big feet. You've
Oh,
never...
yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
I'm like, come on, keep up with your big feet.
Right.
So